are reporting for the People Summit YouTube channel. We have here Norman Girvan, who's a renowned Caribbean political economist. Girvan spoke before about a series of issues confronting people that are going to be discussing the summit. Now, I wanted to ask you, Girvan, about how do you believe that the UN could address the current economic crisis? And why do you think that it is the only legitimate place to seek a solution to the economic crisis?
Well, it's the only legitimate forum because it's the only country, it's the only forum where all the nations of the world are represented. So it's the only universal forum where all states have a voice, and especially the smaller and the weaker states. The G20 is a forum of the largest, the most populous, and the most powerful countries of the world, but it has not been endowed with that authority. It is a self-assumed authority which came out of the G7 and the G8. The United Nations is endowed with that legitimacy and authority by the Charter of the United Nations, to which all countries subscribe, and it is, as I say, it is the only legitimate forum. That is the view of many of us. That was the call coming out of the Stiglitz Commission, which reported to the chair, the President of the United Nations General Assembly. It was a call coming out of a forum of 1,500 economists gathered at the globalization meeting in Havana earlier this year. And the G20, to demonstrate the limitations of the G20, is that there was the main consequence of the meeting of the G20 was that the International Monetary Fund should be further empowered with additional resources. Now, the International Monetary Fund has virtually no legitimacy in the rest of the world, outside of the industrialized world. It has power, but no legitimacy. It has power because it controls emergency funding for the weakest and the most distressed countries. But its credibility as an institution for resolving crises, balance of payments crises of the distressed countries of the South is virtually zero. Its policies have been discredited, they have failed, and they furthermore have no power to discipline the economic management of the largest countries of the world, the United States and Western Europe. They were powerless to prevent this crisis. They didn't even know that it was going to happen, at least not to the extent of the severity that it has happened, and they lack credibility. But this is the institution of the G20 is entrusted with the responsibility of the principal responsibility of resolving the crisis, and that's not acceptable. So essentially, and this, as the panel, which was chaired by Nobel laureate Professor Stiglitz, said, it's not the G7 or the G8 or the G20 or the G30. It should be the G192. That is to say, all the countries, all the states in the world community.
Thank you. The other question we have is about, you talked about the need and the relevance of moving away from having the US dollar being the main currency of any transaction and developing regional currencies. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, the president of Ecuador has made a call for regional currencies, and I think there are several Latin American countries which are exploring that option, and I believe that the option of having a regional currency or clearing mechanism is also being explored in Asia. The fact that the US dollar has been the principal reserve currency in world trade and world finance means that the United States was able to run huge deficits, balance of payments deficits, and fiscal deficits, something which no other country was able to do, merely by essentially borrowing from the rest of the world, because its own currency is a reserve asset. In order to hold everybody holds their reserves in US dollars. And this has been a privilege that the United States has had, but which has been a major weakness for the United States, because it has meant that the US has been able to escape the responsible fiscal and economic management which no other country has been able to escape. which is one of the things which led to this crisis, and which also means that the savings of the rest of the world are tied up with the U.S. dollar. So it has been a major source of instability, both for the United States dollar and for the world economy. And now we have seen what has happened as a consequence of being shielded from the normal discipline that an economy has. The consequence being that they have had a huge meltdown, and that meltdown is being transmitted to the rest of the world. So what we need is a system in which there is a global currency which is independent of any one country and which is controlled by no single country or group of countries, which is under some form of international control and regulation. Now, this may not be possible to move on to that overnight, but it is a very necessary move. In other words, steps need to be taken towards that. China has called for that. The Stiglitz Commission has also called for that. And I think it's inevitable. The only question is whether it happens in a managed and rational way, or whether it happens as a result of a catastrophic fall in the value of the U.S. dollar.
Thank you for that. Now, one last question we have for you is, what do you hope we can achieve in the summit?
Which one?
This one.
Oh, this one. I would say networking, exchange of information, experiences, coordination of advocacy amongst people-based organizations which are working towards finding an alternative to the not just the capitalist crisis, but the civilizational crisis that we are presently involved in. And also helping to build more bridges between the social movements of the English-speaking Caribbean and of Latin America, which is something which we need to do. The amount of contact between the social movements of both has been much less than what we need to have. So I'm hoping that is a solid accomplishment.
Thank you so much for this interview. This was Irmary Reyes-Santos and Michael Bruce reporting for the People's Summit. Thank you.